Okay, so today we're going to talk about how do we find the middle of a segment or the midpoint. And so midpoint literally means that it's equal distance from A to M as it is from M to B, so that these would be equal distance. And in geometry, we mark distances with these little tick marks. So if I had marked those with both the same amount of tick marks, that shows that they're the same length. Or if I knew, for example, that AB was 10 units long, and I knew that AM was 5 units, and from M to B is also 5 units, then I would know that M is the midpoint. Okay, exactly what you would assume it is. It's directly in the middle. Now, if I have ordered pairs, then I can use a midpoint equation where my midpoint, okay, which is going to be a new ordered pair. Okay, so here's my ordered pair, and I'm going to have an x value in my ordered pair, and I'm going to have a y value in my ordered pair. To find this x value, I take whatever 2 points I have, and I add the x values together and divide by 2. Now, really, all that's doing is it's finding the average of my x values. Okay, where's the middle of my x values? So if I looked at this diagram up above, I can see that A, my x value is 2, and at B, my x value is 6. So if I think of, well, what is the average of 2 and 6, or what's in the middle of 2 and 6? Is it 6 or is it 5? It's 5. It's totally 5. So if I have 2 and I have 5, and I think about, well, what's in the middle of 2 and 5? Or if I think about down here from this x value 2 to this x value 5, right in the middle of that x value would be 3.5. So I know that the middle of my x values is 3.5 here. To find the y value of my midpoint, all I'm going to do is find the average of my y's. So for my formula, okay, to average something, two things, I'm just adding up my y values and dividing by 2. So I always like to tell kids it's really nice to have kind of this larger idea that I don't need a midpoint equation. I just want to find the average. Okay, what is the average of the two x values? What's the average of the two y values? That's going to be where your middle value is, where your midpoint is. So going back to this diagram, for A, my y value is 1, and for B, my y value is 3, and in the middle is 2. Okay, and I know that that is where my midpoint is going to be. So if up above in this diagram, if I were to use my fancy little formula here, which again is really just finding my average, well then I could list out, okay, so point A, my x value was 2 and my y value is 1. For point B, my x value is 5 and my y value is 3. My midpoint can be found by adding my two x values up, so 2 plus 5, and dividing it by 2. Okay, and notice I'm writing it as an ordered pair. So I'm saying I'm going to add these x's and divide by 2, and that's going to be my new x value in my ordered pair. I'm going to add my y values, so 1 plus 3, and divide it by 2. And that's going to give me a new ordered pair with an x and a y value. And so my x value, 5 plus 2 is 7, divided by 2 is 3.5. 1 plus 3 is 4, divided by 2 is 2, which is how I get this midpoint we already talked about was at 3.5 too. Okay, so midpoint, exactly in the middle. Okay, I can either use my formula or I can average my x's and average my y's. We're trying to find that middle point. So a few examples here. On my first one, so I don't need a visual to be able to do this. I don't need the graph. It says use the midpoint formula to find the midpoint for the following pairs of points. So if I'm using my formula, then I'm going to say, okay, I have -4 and 4, those are my two x values. I'm going to divide them by 2. I'm going to find the average of my x values. And then I have 7 and 7. I'm going to divide them by 2. Now, if both my y values are 7, the average of 7 and 7 is going to be 7. Okay, so in other words, that's just going to end up being 7 itself because there is no middle between 7 and 7. Just the average is going to be 7 itself. The middle between -4 and 4. Okay, again, have that bigger idea that we're just finding the middle number or the average between the two numbers. So between -4 and 4, the middle would be 0. That's what happens here. -4 plus 4 is 0. Divided by 2 is 0. 7 plus 7 is 14. Divided by 2 is 7. Okay, the middle of those 2 points brings me to 0, 7. If I just totally skip over that formula, I can still do this, okay? If I find the middle, so if I think of 9 and 3, and I go, okay, what number is in the middle of 9 and 3? Well, that would be 6. If I go -2 to 5, so that one's a little bit trickier. So let's think of our formula, -2 and 5. So if I were to add those together, right, because that's how I find the average, is I add them and divide by 2. If I were to add my y values together, it would be 3. Divide by 2 is going to give me 3 halves, or a midpoint at 6, 1.5. Okay, I'm just finding average of my x's, average of my y's. On C, the average of my x values, so I have 5 and -6. Adding those together would give me -1. Dividing by 2 gives me -1/2. Not even thinking of the formula here. If I say, what's in the middle of 5 and 7, you would tell me 6. Okay, average formula is going to do the same thing. So adding my y's, dividing by 2, adding my y's, 5 and 7 is going to give me 12. Dividing by 2 gives me 6. And I don't care if you write 3 halves or 1.5, however you want to write it, is fine with me when it's a fraction for your midpoint. Okay, so last one, let me use our formula here. So for my x values, I'm going to add my x's and divide by 2. To find my y value, I'm going to add my y's and divide by 2. That's how we average two numbers. Add them and divide by 2. 12 and 13, that's going to give me 25. 25 divided by 2. I can either leave it like that, 25 divided by 2, or I'll rewrite it as a decimal in a minute. Adding my y's gives me 9 over 2. Okay, so this first midpoint, the way I have this written, totally you can leave it like that. Or we can rewrite it as a decimal. So 25 halves is going to give me 12.5. And 9 halves is going to give me 4.5. Okay, another way you could write this is as a mixed number. Okay, so third option here, I could have also written it as 12 and a half and 4.5. Okay, any of those answers would be acceptable.